Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars drift past the main viewing screen. The ship moved through space like a metal whale, its dark hull cutting through the endless black. For 50 years, humans had traveled among the stars, but they were still the new kids in a very old neighborhood. The galaxy was full of ancient races who had been flying between worlds when humans were still learning to make fire. The Zephyrian Empire ruled from the center of the galaxy with ships that looked like living crystals. The Corvan Federation controlled the eastern spiral arm with technology that could bend light itself. Dozens of other species had claimed their piece of space long before Earth even knew there was space to claim. Sarah had been captain of the Retribution for 5 years. Her ship was Earth's pride. But she knew what the other races thought of it. To them, human technology was like a stone knife compared to their laser swords. The Retribution carried 800 crew members, all of them aware that every alien they met saw them as primitives who had gotten lucky enough to discover faster-than-light travel. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of engines and the occasional beep from the control stations. Lieutenant Martinez sat at the navigation console, plotting their course to the Kepler system. Chief Engineer Thompson was arguing with the computer about power flow rates. Everything seemed normal, the way it had been for months. Sarah walked to the communications station where Ensign Park was monitoring the galactic news feeds. Most of it was the same political talk that had been going on for decades. Trade disputes, border disagreements, and complaints about mining rights. The Galactic Consortium met every month to discuss these problems, but nothing ever really changed. "Anything interesting today?" Sarah asked. "The usual stuff, Captain," Park replied. "The Zephyrians are complaining about human colonies again. They say we're mining too close to their territory." Sarah frowned. The Zephyrian complaints had been getting louder lately. Earth's colonies had been finding rare minerals that the Zephyrians had controlled for centuries. Every time humans found something valuable, the crystal-skinned aliens claimed it was in their ancient territory. "They've been saying that for 2 years now," Sarah said. "Has anyone bothered to check the old maps?" "Yes, ma'am. Our colonies are all in neutral space, exactly where they're supposed to be. But the Zephyrians say the borders were different 1,000 years ago." Sarah shook her head. 1,000 years ago, humans didn't even know other intelligent life existed. Now alien races were using history lessons to justify pushing Earth around. It was getting harder to stay diplomatic about it. The truth was, humans were tired of being treated like children. For 50 years, Earth had followed every rule the consortium made. They paid their taxes, sent representatives to meetings, and tried to be good neighbors. But good neighbors didn't get respect in galactic politics. They got walked on. Sarah remembered her first meeting with Zephyrian officials. Their leader, a tall creature made of living crystal, had looked at her like she was an interesting bug. When she spoke, it had translated her words into what it called simplified concepts for its followers. The message was clear. Humans were too stupid to understand real diplomacy, but humans were learning fast. Earth's scientists had been studying alien technology for decades, trying to figure out how crystal ships could move faster than light without engines humans could see. They had been making progress, though they kept their discoveries quiet. In galactic politics, showing weakness was dangerous, but showing too much strength could be even worse. The communication system beeped with an incoming message. Sarah walked back to her command chair as the main screen lit up with the face of Admiral Rodriguez from Earth Command. "Captain Chen, we have a situation developing in the outer colonies. 3 of our settlements have stopped responding to regular check-ins." Sarah felt a cold feeling in her stomach. "Which ones, Admiral?" "New Geneva, Kepler's Hope, and Terra Nova. They all went silent within 6 hours of each other. We're sending you to investigate." The 3 colonies Rodriguez mentioned were all peaceful mining settlements. New Geneva had 200,000 people, mostly families who had volunteered to help Earth expand into space. Kepler's Hope was smaller, but growing fast. Terra Nova was home to scientists studying alien plant life. "Any idea what might have happened?" Sarah asked. Rodriguez looked tired. "We don't know. Could be equipment failure, solar storms, or..." He paused. Or something else. The colonies have backup systems and emergency beacons. For all three to go silent at once means something big happened. Sarah understood what the Admiral wasn't saying. In space, when colonies went silent, it usually meant they were dead. Pirates, equipment failure, or worse. She had seen the aftermath of colony attacks before, and the memory still kept her awake at night. We'll get there as fast as we can, Admiral. The Retribution can make the trip in 18 hours. Good. And Captain, take this seriously. If someone is attacking our people, we need to know who and why. The political situation is getting tense enough. Without mystery threats, the transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at the empty screen. She turned to Lieutenant Martinez at navigation. Plot a course for the New Geneva system, maximum speed, and send a message to all department heads. I want this ship ready for anything. As the crew prepared for their mission, Sarah stood at the main viewing screen watching stars turn into streaks of light as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. Somewhere ahead of them, 3 human colonies had gone dark. Whether they would find answers, survivors, or just empty worlds, she didn't know. What Sarah couldn't know was that this investigation would start a chain of events that would change the galaxy forever. The quiet humans who had followed every rule and accepted every insult for 50 years were about to discover exactly how far they could be pushed before they pushed back. And when humanity finally decided to show the galaxy what they were really capable of, entire worlds would burn. The first thing Sarah noticed when the Retribution dropped out of faster-than-light travel was the smell. Even through the ship's air recycling systems, the bridge crew could detect something wrong. The ship's sensors were already screaming warnings about radiation levels and atmospheric contamination. New Geneva should have been visible from their position. A blue and green world with cities that glowed softly in the night. Instead, Sarah saw a gray ball of rock that glowed with the wrong kind of light. The entire planet looked like it had been cooked from the inside out. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Martinez. He was staring at his sensor readings like he couldn't believe what they said. "Captain, the entire surface is glass. The whole planet has been melted." Sarah felt sick. Life signs? None. Temperature readings show the surface is still cooling down. Whatever did this happened recently, maybe 12 hours ago. Dr. Williams, the ship's chief medical officer, looked up from her station. "Captain, the radiation signature is consistent with plasma bombardment, but this is beyond anything I've seen in the war archives. This wasn't just an attack. This was complete sterilization." Sarah ordered the ship to move closer for a detailed scan. As they approached the dead world, the full horror of what had happened became clear. Cities had been vaporized, leaving behind only smooth craters of fused glass. The oceans had boiled away, and the atmosphere was filled with radioactive particles that would make the planet uninhabitable for centuries. 200,000 people, Sarah said quietly. An entire colony. Gone. The investigation team found evidence in orbit around the dead planet. Pieces of metal that had once been escape pods, now twisted and melted. A few scattered emergency beacons that had managed to broadcast for a few minutes before being silenced. The recordings were almost too painful to watch. Sarah listened to the final transmission from New Geneva's governor. The woman's voice was calm even as alarms blared in the background. Unknown ships are attacking civilian targets. They're not responding to surrender signals. Tell Earth that we tried to negotiate. Tell them that the transmission ended in static. The Retribution jumped to the Kepler's Hope system next. They found the same thing. A dead world. Its surface turned to radioactive glass. The smaller colony had been home to 50,000 people, including hundreds of children. They had been building schools and parks, planning for a future that would never come. Terra Nova was the worst. The scientific colony had been peaceful, studying alien plant life and trying to understand how different species could share the galaxy. When Sarah's team found the research station, they discovered something that made her blood freeze. The attackers had taken their time with Terra Nova. Instead of just destroying everything at once, they had targeted specific areas. Schools first, then hospitals, then residential areas. They had wanted the people to suffer, to know they were all going to die. In the ruins of the main laboratory, Chief Engineer Thompson found something important, a piece of alien technology that had been buried in the rubble, protected by the collapsed building. When he scanned it, the results were unmistakable. "Captain, this is a Zephyrian plasma cannon, focusing crystal. It's got their energy signature all over it. This is what they use to power their main weapons." Sarah stared at the crystal fragment. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like frozen lightning. But it was also proof. The Zephyrian Empire had murdered 3 human colonies in cold blood. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Absolutely. Every species has a different way of focusing plasma energy. This crystal matrix is purely Zephyrian. No other race in the galaxy makes anything like it." Sarah called an emergency meeting with her senior officers. In the ship's conference room, they discussed what they had found and what it meant. 2 million people, said Dr. Williams. "That's more than most wars in galactic history. And they were all civilians. The targeting pattern shows this was planned," added Lieutenant Martinez. "They didn't just attack randomly. They chose our most peaceful colonies, the ones with families and children." Thompson slammed his hand on the table. "We have proof. We have their weapon signatures, their technology fragments. Everything we need to show the galaxy what they did." Sarah looked around the table at her officers. These were good people, trained to follow the law and work within the system. But the system had failed to protect 2 million innocent humans. "We're going to report this to the consortium," she said finally. "Earth Command needs to know, and the galactic government needs to act." The trip back to consortium space took 3 days. During that time, Sarah and her crew put together the most detailed investigation report in human history. They had sensor readings, physical evidence, weapon signatures, and analysis from Earth's best scientists. The case against the Zephyrian Empire was perfect. The consortium meeting was held on Neutral Station, a massive space platform where all the galaxy's species came to discuss politics and trade. Sarah had never seen so many different aliens in one place. Tall crystal beings, floating gas creatures, robots, and dozens of others she couldn't identify. Ambassador Harrison presented the human case to the full assembly. He was a good speaker, and he laid out the evidence clearly: the weapon signatures, the targeting patterns, the complete destruction of peaceful colonies. Everything pointed to the Zephyrian Empire. The Zephyrian representative was a tall crystal being named Prime Resonance Thakmor. When Ambassador Harrison finished speaking, the alien rose to address the assembly. "These accusations are ridiculous," Thakmor said in a voice like breaking glass. "The Zephyrian Empire would never waste time attacking primitive settlements. If we wanted to remove humans from those systems, we would have simply claimed them legally." Other representatives nodded in agreement. The Corvin delegate suggested that pirates from outside the galaxy might be responsible. The Antaran counselor mentioned that human technology might have malfunctioned, causing the colonies to destroy themselves. Ambassador Harrison tried to present the physical evidence, but the assembly wasn't interested. Every piece of proof was dismissed as inconclusive or possibly faked. When he showed images of the dead worlds, several delegates suggested that humans might have attacked their own colonies to gain sympathy. The final vote was unanimous except for Earth's representative. The consortium officially declared that there was insufficient evidence to investigate the Zephyrian Empire. The case was closed. Sarah watched the proceedings from the observation deck, feeling something cold and hard growing in her chest. She had believed in justice, in the rule of law, in the idea that civilization meant protecting the innocent. But the galaxy's idea of civilization apparently didn't include humans. As the assembly broke up and delegates returned to their ships, Sarah received new orders from Earth Command. The message was short and encrypted. "Return to Earth immediately. New mission parameters await." On the trip home, Sarah thought about the children of Terra Nova and the families of New Geneva. They had trusted the system to protect them. They had believed that being good galactic citizens would keep them safe. They had been wrong. And as the retribution jumped toward Earth, Sarah Chen began to understand that sometimes justice had to be taken rather than asked for. Earth looked different when the retribution returned home. Sarah could see it in the orbital traffic patterns and the increased military patrols. Ships that should have been exploring distant systems were instead gathering around humanity's homeworld. Something big was happening, and it was being kept very quiet. Instead of the usual docking at Luna Station, Sarah received orders to proceed to coordinates in the outer asteroid belt. When the Retribution arrived at the location, she couldn't believe what she saw. Hidden among the rocks was a shipyard larger than anything Earth had ever built. Hundreds of ships moved between construction platforms, and massive industrial stations pulled raw materials from the asteroids. "How long has this been here?" Lieutenant Martinez asked, staring at the display screen. "Unknown," replied Thompson. "But this kind of operation takes years to build. Someone has been planning this for a long time." A message came through on a secure channel. "UES Retribution. This is Shipyard Command. Proceed to Dock 7 for immediate refit. Captain Chen. Report to Admiral Rodriguez as soon as you're aboard." The docking platform was crawling with technicians and engineers. Sarah had never seen so many people working with such intense focus. They moved like they were preparing for war. But this was unlike any military preparation she had ever witnessed. The equipment they were installing looked completely unfamiliar. Admiral Rodriguez met her at the airlock. He looked like he had aged 10 years since their last communication, and his eyes had the hard look of someone who had made difficult decisions. "Sarah, we need to talk. What you're about to see is classified beyond anything in human history. The existence of this facility, the technology we're about to show you, all of it is known to fewer than 1,000 people on Earth." He led her through corridors filled with scientists and military personnel. Everyone wore the same expression of focused determination, like they were working against a deadline that could not be missed. "Admiral, what is this place?" Sarah asked. "This is what humanity has been building while the galaxy thought we were primitive. For 50 years, we've been playing the role of the simple newcomers. While our best minds worked on projects the other races couldn't imagine, they entered a massive laboratory where humans in white coats worked alongside machines Sarah didn't recognize. At the center of the room was something that made her stop walking. It looked like a piece of space itself, dark matter held in place by energy fields she couldn't understand. "This is a spatial fold generator," Rodriguez explained. "It allows a ship to exist in multiple places at the same time by bending space around it. The Zephyrians think they're advanced because they can move faster than light. We can move outside of space entirely." Sarah stared at the device. "How long have we had this technology?" 20 years. "We've also developed weapons systems that make Zephyrian plasma cannons look like firecrackers. Kinetic bombardment systems that can accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Fusion mines that can be disguised as asteroids. And something we call the Hellfire Protocol." Rodriguez led her to another section of the laboratory where scientists were working with what looked like contained lightning. Energy danced between metal poles, while computers monitored readings that seemed impossible. "The Hellfire Protocol can turn a planet's atmosphere into fuel," Rodriguez said quietly. "It creates a chain reaction that burns oxygen, nitrogen, even inert gases. Once it starts, it doesn't stop until there's nothing left to burn." Sarah felt cold. "You're talking about destroying entire worlds." "The Zephyrians destroyed 3 of our worlds and killed 2 million of our people. The consortium refused to act. They made it clear that human lives don't matter to them." Rodriguez turned to face her. "So we're going to show them exactly how much their lives matter to us." Over the next few hours, Sarah learned about humanity's secret war preparations. Ships had been gathering for months, supposedly for exploration missions or trade runs. In reality, Earth had been moving its entire space fleet into position for a strike the galaxy would never expect. But the centerpiece of the operation was Sarah's ship. The Retribution was being completely rebuilt, with technology that didn't exist in any galactic database. Her hull was being reinforced with materials created in laboratories hidden on the dark side of the moon. Her computer systems were being replaced with quantum processors that could calculate faster than any known artificial intelligence. Most importantly, she was being fitted with the spatial fold system that would allow her to appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. The Retribution would become a ghost ship, able to strike without warning and disappear before anyone could respond. "Why my ship?" Sarah asked. "Why the retribution?" "Because you were there," Rodriguez replied. "You saw what they did to our people. You looked the consortium in the eye when they refused to provide justice. You understand what this is really about." Sarah watched technicians install weapon systems that looked like works of art. Each component was perfectly designed, built with a precision that spoke of years of careful development. Humanity hadn't just been hiding their technology, they had been perfecting it. "How many people are we talking about killing?" she asked. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "The Zephyrian Empire has 12 core worlds, with a total population of about 2 billion. They also control 47 colony systems with another 3 billion inhabitants. 5 billion people. 5 billion people who stood by while 2 million humans were murdered. 5 billion people who belong to a civilization that considers us disposable." Rodriguez looked at her with eyes that held no mercy. "How many of them protested when our colonies were destroyed? How many of them demanded justice for our dead?" Sarah knew the answer. The galactic news feeds had barely mentioned the destroyed human colonies. To most alien species, it had been a minor story about some unknown primitives losing a few settlements. Nobody cared, because humans didn't matter in galactic politics. But that was about to change. "The mission is simple," Rodriguez continued. "Take the retribution to Zephyrian space, and give them a chance to surrender the individuals responsible for the colony attacks. If they refuse, implement the Hellfire Protocol on their core worlds." Sarah felt the weight of what she was being asked to do. This wasn't just military action. This was the kind of warfare that would be remembered for thousands of years. What about the consortium? What about the other species? They had their chance to provide justice through law. They chose to protect the Zephyrians instead of seeking truth. Now they can live with the consequences of that choice. The refit took 72 hours. When it was complete, the retribution looked almost the same from the outside. But Sarah could feel the power humming through her ship. The engines were silent but incredibly powerful. The weapons systems responded to her thoughts almost before she finished thinking them. Her crew had been briefed on their new mission, and she was surprised by their reaction. Instead of horror at what they were being asked to do, she saw determination. These men and women had friends and family on the destroyed colonies. They had watched the galaxy dismiss human suffering like it didn't matter. Now they had the chance to make it matter. As the retribution prepared to depart Earth's hidden shipyard, Sarah stood on her bridge, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire continued its daily life, confident that their advanced technology and political power made them untouchable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The age of humanity playing by other species' rules was over. The time for justice had come, and if the galaxy wouldn't provide it through law, then humanity would deliver it through fire. The Zephyrian military command station floated in space like a crystal cathedral. For 1,000 years, it had coordinated the Empire's military operations from its position near the galactic core. 3 small stars had been moved into orbit around it. Their combined energy-feeding shields that no weapon in galactic history had ever broken. Sarah watched the massive structure through the Retribution's main viewer. Even from a distance of several light-years, the station was impressive. It was larger than most moons, its crystalline surface reflecting starlight in patterns that were beautiful and terrifying. "Final approach, Captain," reported Lieutenant Martinez. "Spatial fold generators are online. We can materialize anywhere within 1,000 kilometers of the target." Sarah looked around her bridge. Her crew was calm but focused, ready for what was about to become the most important battle in human history. They all knew that in a few minutes, everything would change forever. "Open a channel to the command station," she ordered. The main screen showed a Zephyrian officer, its crystal face reflecting internal light in patterns that indicated surprise and confusion. No ship had ever approached their command station without being detected light-years away. "Unknown vessel, you are in restricted military space. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be destroyed." Sarah stood up from her command chair. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Retribution. I am here to deliver a message from humanity to the Zephyrian Empire. The alien's light patterns shifted to what she recognized as arrogance. Humans are not authorized to enter this system. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The consequences, Sarah said quietly, are exactly what I'm here to discuss. 3 days ago, Zephyrian forces destroyed 3 human colonies and murdered 2 million innocent civilians. I am here to demand that those responsible be surrendered for trial. The Zephyrian officer's crystalline face seemed to shimmer with amusement. Humans are not in a position to make demands. You have one primitive ship against the most advanced military installation in the galaxy. Leave now and you might survive to reach home. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Even now, even when facing a weapon they couldn't understand, the Zephyrians still saw humans as beneath their notice. You have 60 seconds to respond with an agreement to surrender the war criminals responsible for genocide, she said. If you refuse, I will consider that a declaration of war against all humanity. The Zephyrian's light pattern shifted to what she had learned meant laughter. War? You have one ship, human. We have 1,000 ships in this system alone, and shields powered by stellar cores. What exactly do you think you can accomplish? Oh, Sarah looked at her watch. You have 30 seconds left. The alien officer's pattern changed to anger. You dare threaten us? The Zephyrian Empire has existed for 10,000 years. We have defeated species that were crossing the galaxy when your world was still covered in ice. One human ship is nothing. 10 seconds, Sarah said. Bridge crew, step away from your stations, the Zephyrian commanded. I want to watch this primitive ship break apart when our shields reflect its pathetic weapons. The countdown reached 0. Hellfire Protocol, authorized and armed, Sarah said clearly. Lieutenant Martinez, execute spatial fold. Bring us to point-blank range. Space twisted around the retribution, and suddenly they were less than a kilometer from the command station. The alien crew on the viewing screen had exactly enough time to register shock before Sarah gave the final order. Fire. What happened next would be studied by xenobiologists and physicists for centuries. The Hellfire Protocol didn't just attack the command station. It attacked the very atoms that made up the station's structure. Molecular bonds broke apart and reformed as fuel for an exotic plasma reaction that fed on matter itself. The station didn't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, it began to burn from the inside out. Crystal walls became transparent as the fire consumed them at the atomic level. The 3 stars that powered its shields flickered as their energy was absorbed into the growing inferno. Sarah watched on her screens as a 1,000-year-old fortress simply ceased to exist, converted into pure energy that lit up space like a new sun. The fire burned so hot that it would remain visible from neighboring systems for weeks. My God, whispered Dr. Williams. It's beautiful. The entire process took less than 30 seconds. When it was over, nothing remained of the Zephyrian command station except expanding plasma clouds and electromagnetic radiation that would interfere with communications across half the galaxy. Sarah activated the ship's general broadcast system, sending her message on all frequencies throughout Zephyrian space. This is Captain Sarah Chen speaking to the Zephyrian Empire and all who can hear this transmission. You destroyed 3 human colonies and murdered 2 million innocent people. When we demanded justice through legal channels, you laughed at us. When we asked for the responsible parties to be surrendered for trial, you threatened us. She paused, watching the plasma fires still burning where the command station had been. We are no longer asking. This demonstration was your warning. You have 24 hours to surrender every individual involved in the colony attacks, or we will begin systematic destruction of your military assets, your infrastructure, and your worlds. The response came faster than she expected. The Zephyrian Grand Fleet, 847 ships of crystal and metal, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Sarah had expected this. Intelligence reports suggested the Zephyrians would respond with overwhelming force rather than negotiation. Captain, reported Martinez, we're being hailed by the fleet commander. The main screen showed a Zephyrian general. Its crystal structure more complex and beautiful than any Sarah had seen before. This was clearly a high-ranking officer, probably with centuries of experience. I am Grand Admiral Keth Var of the Imperial Fleet. You have committed an act of war against the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and you may be permitted a quick death. Sarah studied the alien commander. Like all his species, he believed that superior numbers and advanced technology guaranteed victory. He had probably never lost a battle in his long career. Admiral, you have one chance to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Surrender the war criminals responsible for attacking our colonies, and this ends here. Kethvar's crystalline face shifted through patterns that indicated contempt. You face 847 ships with weapon systems that have conquered a dozen species. Your single primitive vessel cannot hope to survive. This is your last chance to surrender. Number 1. No, Sarah said quietly. This is yours. The battle began when the Zephyrian fleet opened fire. Hundreds of plasma cannons lit up space with energy beams that could cut through mountain ranges. Their targeting systems were perfect, designed to hit objects moving at significant fractions of light speed. But the retribution wasn't there when the beams arrived. Using her spatial fold generators, Sarah's ship existed in multiple locations simultaneously, striking from positions that should have been impossible. Kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds punched through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. Each shot carried more energy than most species' largest weapons. The aliens tried to adapt their tactics, but human technology was beyond anything in their experience. Fusion mines, disguised as debris, materialized inside their formations, destroying dozens of ships at once. The retribution moved through space like a ghost, appearing and disappearing faster than their sensors could track. Grand Admiral Kethvar tried to coordinate a response, but his commands were reaching ships that no longer existed. One by one, the pride of the Zephyrian military became expanding clouds of superheated metal and crystal. The battle lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. When the firing stopped, 847 Zephyrian ships had been reduced to glowing debris. The retribution hadn't suffered so much as a scratch on her hull. Sarah activated the communications system again, broadcasting her message throughout the galaxy on all frequencies. The Zephyrian Empire sent their entire grand fleet to destroy one human ship. That fleet no longer exists. This is what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness, when you confuse restraint with inability. She looked directly into the camera, knowing that her words were being heard by every species in the galaxy. To the Zephyrian Empire. You murdered our people and laughed when we sought justice. You sent your finest warriors to silence us when we demanded accountability. Now your command structure is gone, and your fleet is dead. You have 12 hours to surrender the war criminals, or we move to the next phase. Sarah turned to her crew. They had just accomplished something impossible by every measure of galactic military theory. One ship had destroyed an entire fleet and eliminated a fortress that had stood for a millennium. How are we doing, people? She asked. Thompson looked up from his engineering station with a grin. All systems operating perfectly, Captain. The spatial fold generators are working better than our best projections. Weapons systems show no signs of stress. Dr. Williams checked her medical sensors. No casualties, no radiation exposure. The ship's shields held perfectly. Lieutenant Martinez plotted their next course. Ready to fold space on your command, Captain. Sarah nodded. The Zephyrians had been given every chance to end this peacefully. They had chosen war instead of justice, force instead of law. Now, they would learn what war with humanity actually meant. Set course for the core worlds, she ordered. It's time to finish what they started. The emergency session of the Galactic Consortium was already in chaos when news of the fleet's destruction reached them. Representatives from dozens of species argued in the Great Assembly Hall, while emergency broadcasts filled the communication networks. For the first time in galactic history, a single ship had destroyed an entire Imperial fleet. Ambassador Harrison stood at the human delegation station, watching alien representatives panic as they tried to understand what had happened. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitives were now demanding answers about weapons that shouldn't exist. The Terrans have hidden their true capabilities, announced the Corvin delegate, its gas-based form swirling with agitation. This violation of galactic law must be addressed immediately. The Antaran counselor's robotic voice cut through the noise. Our analysis indicates human technology is centuries beyond current galactic standards. This represents a fundamental shift in the balance of power. Ambassador Harrison finally stood to speak. The assembly fell silent, suddenly very interested in what the human representative had to say. For 50 years, we asked for nothing but the right to exist peacefully among you. We followed your laws, paid your taxes, and respected your customs. When our people were murdered, we came to you seeking justice through legal means. He looked around the assembly at faces and forms representing hundreds of different species. You chose to protect the murderers instead of seeking truth. You dismissed our evidence and ignored our pleas. You made it clear that human lives have no value in your civilization. The silence in the chamber was complete. Today you discovered that we are not the helpless primitives you believed us to be. Tomorrow, you will learn the price of your indifference to genocide. Meanwhile, the Retribution had positioned itself at the edge of Zephyrian space, using its spatial fold capabilities to observe all 12 core worlds simultaneously. Sarah stood on her bridge, looking at tactical displays that showed the heart of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Each world was a masterpiece of crystalline architecture and advanced technology. Cities that grew like living things covered continents. Space elevators reached from surface to orbit, carrying the wealth that had built an interstellar civilization. Billions of Zephyrians lived and worked on these worlds, most of them unaware that their government had committed genocide against a primitive species. "Captain," said Lieutenant Martinez quietly, "I'm reading massive evacuation efforts on all 12 worlds. They're trying to get their population to safety." Sarah nodded. The Zephyrian government had finally understood the threat they faced. But it was too late for evacuation. The spatial fold technology allowed her ship to attack all 12 worlds at once, and there was nowhere in the galaxy far enough to run. A transmission came through on the emergency diplomatic channel. Sarah accepted it, and her main screen filled with the image of the Zephyrian Emperor himself. The ancient being's crystal form was more complex than any she had seen. Patterns of light flowing through its structure in ways that suggested vast intelligence and age. "I am Emperor Thexdal, ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. I understand that you seek those responsible for the attacks on your colonies. I am prepared to negotiate their surrender." Sarah looked at the Emperor with cold eyes. "Your Majesty, 3 days ago you had the opportunity to surrender the war criminals through legal channels. You chose to deny that our people had any right to justice. Yesterday you had the chance to end this, after we demonstrated our capabilities. You chose to send your fleet to destroy us instead. I have a rounder, 100%. You had the chance to end this, and he would fleet to destroy us." The Emperor's light patterns shifted to what she recognized as desperation. "Surely you understand that the actions of a few military commanders do not justify the destruction of entire worlds. There are billions of innocent beings on our planets. Were the children on Terra Nova not innocent?" Sarah asked. "Were the families on New Geneva not beings deserving of life? Your military didn't just attack our colonies, Your Majesty. They targeted schools and hospitals specifically. They wanted our people to suffer. They wanted our people to suffer." She walked closer to the screen, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You could have prevented all of this by simply admitting your crime and surrendering those responsible. Instead, you chose war. Now you will live with the consequences of that choice." The Emperor tried one last appeal. "If you do this, you will become the very monsters you claim to oppose. The galaxy will never forgive humanity for genocide on this scale." Sarah felt something hard and cold settle in her chest. "Your Majesty, forgiveness requires that someone survive to offer it. And the galaxy already had its chance to prevent this, when they chose not to seek justice for our dead." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "All hands, prepare for simultaneous planetary bombardment. Target all 12 core worlds. Hellfire Protocol, authorized and armed." On 12 different worlds, Zephyrian citizens looked up at their skies and saw something impossible. The human ship appeared simultaneously over all their planets, existing in multiple locations at once through technology they couldn't comprehend. Sarah activated the ship's general communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies throughout the galaxy. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Retribution. I speak now for all humanity, living and dead. For the past 72 hours, we have sought justice for the murder of 2 million human civilians. The Zephyrian Empire chose war instead of law, force instead of truth. Her voice carried across space to every inhabited world in the galaxy. What follows is not revenge. It is justice delivered by those who were denied legal recourse. I will now read the names of every human who died in the unprovoked attacks on our colonies. When I finish reading their names, the Hellfire Protocol will activate. For the next 6 hours, Sarah read names. 2 million names of men, women, and children who had died when their worlds burned. Scientists and teachers, miners and doctors, children who would never grow up, and elders who had lived through humanity's first steps into space. While she read, the galaxy watched and listened. Species that had never heard of humans learned about the colonies that had been destroyed. Governments that had dismissed the attacks as minor incidents discovered the true scale of what had been done. On the Zephyrian worlds, billions of people waited in terror as a human voice spoke the names of the dead across their communication systems. They began to understand that their government had not just attacked some primitive settlements, they had committed genocide against innocent families. When Sarah finished reading the last name, the silence that followed was deafening. Maria Santos, age 7, student at Terra Nova Elementary School, the last civilian murdered by the Zephyrian Empire. Sarah looked directly into the camera. Justice is now served. The Hellfire Protocol activated simultaneously over 12 worlds. What happened next defied every law of physics the galaxy understood. The space around each planet began to burn with fires that fed on the very atoms of matter itself. Atmospheres ignited in chain reactions that consumed oxygen, nitrogen, and even inert gases that should have been impossible to burn. The fires weren't like conventional weapons that destroyed from the outside. They converted matter into more fuel, burning from within the molecular structure of everything they touched. Cities that had stood for thousands of years became furnaces. Oceans boiled away in minutes. The very air turned into flames that reached into space. From orbit, each world looked like a star being born. The light was visible from other star systems, 12 new suns that had once been the heart of an ancient civilization. The burning lasted for days. When it finally ended, 12 worlds spun silently through space, their surfaces cooled to black glass, their atmospheres gone, their billions of inhabitants reduced to atomic particles scattered in the solar wind. The galaxy watched in horrified silence as an empire that had dominated galactic politics for 10,000 years simply ceased to exist. Sarah's final transmission was broadcast throughout known space. The Zephyrian Empire is no more. Their worlds are silent, their fleets destroyed, their civilization erased. This is the price of genocide. This is what happens when you mistake humanity's desire for peace as weakness. She paused, looking out at the stars that now belonged to a very different galaxy than the one that had existed a week ago. To every species listening, humanity sought justice and was denied. We asked for peace and were given war. We offered friendship and received betrayal. Remember this day, and remember that we are capable of far more than mercy. The transmission ended, and the Retribution folded space, disappearing from Zephyrian territory as quickly as it had arrived. In the days that followed, the Galactic Consortium dissolved as member species fled to their home systems, suddenly unsure about the balance of power that had defined their civilization. Trade routes collapsed, treaties were abandoned. The careful political structure that had maintained galactic peace for millennia crumbled as everyone realized the same truth. Humanity was no longer the primitive newcomer seeking acceptance from advanced civilizations. They had become the apex predator of the galaxy, and their capacity for both mercy and wrath was beyond anything the universe had ever seen. The Retribution was never seen again. But every species in the galaxy knew it was still out there, waiting in the dark between stars. Waiting and watching, ready to emerge if humanity's new position was ever challenged. Where there had once been the mighty Zephyrian Empire, now there was only silence, and the cold light of dead worlds, a monument to the terrible price of underestimating human resolve. The galaxy would never be the same.